Hi everyone, my name's Simon. Welcome to the channel. I'm doing a review on SVbony's SV550. They sent me this scope, very nice of them, for some testing. I'm aware that it's been out for a while, but I'd like to run it through its paces in a suburban 5/6 Bortle scale sky, which is my front or backyard, depending where it's located. And I will put it through its paces. We'll do a review, see what we think of the scope, and yeah, without further ado, let's see how it goes. Okay, so welcome back. We've now got the unboxing out of the way, so let's just go over the scope that was sent to me by SVbony. And as you know, it's a SV550 and it's a triplet apochromatic refractor. The speed is pretty reasonable at f6 with a 480mm length to it. So the kit that they've sent me includes the scope, a field flattener, one-time field flattener, which is supposed to help with any apochromatic or chromatic aberrations with the stars. They've also sent a 360-degree camera angle adjuster, CAA. I think the codes for the field flattener and the rotator are SV209 and SV210 for the camera angle adjuster. And I'll pop some information up about the pricing and deals they've got going at the moment. So at the time of recording, we have Black Friday specials going on, I guess you would call them. So I think you can actually, if you were interested in buying this kit for around, I think it's $850 Australian, it includes the scope, the one-time field flattener, which is this one here, and the camera angle adjuster. So it's not a bad deal for $850. So that, I'm not sure what that is in USD, but must be about 500, I'd say, or even less. Anyway, that's a pretty good deal for these three items, I think, especially if you're a beginner and you're looking to start out in astrophotography. I would have thought at the price point here, it's very hard to beat. So as I said, it's a triplet refractor, so there's three glass elements. One is SFPL51 ED glass, which is not the highest level glass, but for the price, you know, it's still pretty good. It's low dispersion glass, and that element is also comes along with two corrective glass elements to help with any chromatic aberration. And for those who are not aware what I'm referring to there is generally for the quality of the stars, especially in a full frame camera, so larger sensors on the camera out towards the edges on scopes with, you know, not the best quality glass. You may find some chromatic aberration, so your stars in the corners of the field, you may see some little blue and yellow kind of that fuzziness. It's a hard way to describe it, but when we do the testing, I'll see if we get any of those, and I'll talk further about that. But the scope itself, it's a really nice finish actually. It's like a matte. I don't know if the camera picks that up, but it's a matte type of finish, white and red. There are some marks on this dovetail plate here. So we've got a Vixen dovetail plate there. This has been obviously reviewed by other people, and every time, of course, you tighten that in, can make a mark there on the dovetail plate, which it has. So you've got pretty reasonable clamping system. The only thing I would say is I wanted to move, I don't know if you can see here, I wanted to move this ring out to the end, but you might notice that that dew shield, it extends out to there. If I moved that ring out to the end, I wouldn't be able to actually move that all the way back. I would literally only be able to sort of move it back to there. So if that's a problem for people, just be aware of that. For the sake of this video, I've installed it back at this point here, so I can retract the dew shield just to show. And yeah, so we've also got, working our way back from the dew shield, we've got a nice cap that's it's got a felt kind of lining inside, which is good. Sort of keeps it fairly stable on there. The dew shield itself does rotate. That there's a bit of resistance there, which isn't too bad. What I would have liked to have seen is a locking screw that some other mounts have. I have an Askar. I have two Askar telescopes that both have a little screw in there to lock it into position and unlock it when you're moving it. But that being said, you know, all of these little things would bump the price up of this scope, and I think for the money, you know, it's looking like a very good scope. So the focuser, we've got the clamps, as I said, these are easy to adjust, so they just screw off, not a problem. They come out, so you would pull these down like this, and these just come back, and then that literally lets you take the whole telescope out. So I'll put that back for now. One point is that if you're moving this in the tube, it's a good idea to get your focuser straight, or as straight as possible, especially if you're going to put something like an electronic focuser on there, which I may do for testing. I may take it off of my Askar unit. Anyway, so yeah, those clamps are fairly easy to undo and do up, as you can see. As I said, just, yeah, may want to be mindful of that sort of travel of the dew shield. Anyway, so as we come back, we have a dovetail slot for the guides, for a guide scope, or potentially something like a control unit, like an ASI Air. And what I'll probably do is use this slot here. I have this is from my Askar unit, so I'll probably use this 32mm guide scope, stick that in there in that shoe, and use that as my guide camera. I've got an ASI Air, ZWO ASI Air 120mm mini, and that's good enough to do the testing. And for this scope, actually, it's probably a good guide scope to mount up with it. There are some screws here for an additional dovetail slot. What I may do is just install my ASI Air either here or on one of these brackets at the top. What would have been good, I think it comes as an optional extra, is a handle, but obviously they're cognizant of keeping the price down for people, so this one didn't come with one, but I believe you can buy additional kits that include the handle. I would advise getting that because it's handy to sort of carry around, especially if you're going to leave ASI Air and everything on there in place and just sort of take it off of your mount. If your mount's out in the field most of the time, or in your backyard, and you might have a fixed mount, it's good to be able to sometimes just bring the whole lot in. So to be able to carry that around would be good. Then moving back, we've got a dual speed rack and pinion focuser, and it's a 1:10 ratio. So you've got a coarse adjustment here, as you can see there, and the red one at the front there is the fine adjustment. It's a 1:10, as I said, 1:10 ratio. The fine adjustment, they're very nice to move actually, and that will give you some good control over. You can see the tube here moving in and out. That's about 85 millimeters you've got of movement there. Not that I think that you would need that, but it's there anyway. So this is the 1x Field Flattener, and the model is SV209. Let's just open this up. So you get a nice cap on each end, and when you unscrew, let's show that, when you unscrew the center part of the Field Flattener, you can see this is where you would put a up to a 2-inch filter. And then once that's in there, you could then add this onto the telescope. So this end, if you wanted to use the camera angle adjuster, goes onto the camera angle adjuster, and then this end goes onto your camera, which I'll be using a ZWO 2600 MC Pro. So I'll put this back on here and just show you the camera angle adjuster. Camera angle adjuster, the model number is SV210, and looks like this. And you can see that there's a scale there that you can use. This is a 360-degree camera angle adjuster. There's a locking nut here. So you would undo the locking nut, and then this turns the unit. So this end here, I think it's an M54 thread, goes onto the telescope. Then we would connect the 1x Field Flattener onto the camera angle adjuster, and then the camera onto this end here. So let's see how that looks when it's all together on the telescope. That screws in to the end here like so. And what that'll let you do is, instead of having to move or adjust your whole unit here by untightening and rotating that around, what it'll let you do is there's a little lock nut here which you would undo, and then you can actually just turn that whole area around there, which moves. You can see there's a little marker there, and that will move your whole camera and body with that, and then you would just lock that in place. This is the sort of locking nut I was talking about that you could have on the dew shield, but anyway, that's just a small small item. So on the end of the camera angle adjuster, that's where you would put the 1x field flattener. So this is not a reducer, it's a field flattener. And like I said, it is designed to help any potential chromatic aberration you may get from your glass elements inside. I haven't actually tried a Svbony. This would be the first time that I've ever used one. I have two scopes. I have a Askar 65 PHQ and a Askar APO 120, which is they're both really great scopes. So it'll be interesting to see how this one goes and how this 80mm refractor kind of shapes up against my 120. I think, you know, that you have to be a bit sort of realistic in that this is designed as a budget unit. Again, so is the 120, but you know, you get a few more increased sort of options, I suppose you could say, in that unit. So I digress. We would now have so we've got our camera angle adjuster. So there you can see that moves the whole assembly around. If you wanted to move your camera into, you know, a different orientation, or you might be shooting over multiple nights and need to just tweak the rotation of that camera, and that's a nice easy way to do that. You lock that screw back down. As I said, I'll use this ASI 120mm mini for my guide camera. That's going to just slot into that shoe there, if I can get it in there. There we go. And there's a couple of knobs there that will just tighten that up. So I'll lock that into place. I'm probably going to put ASI air on this side to control things. I have salvaged my ASI air, my ASI 2600 MC Pro camera. This is a cooled astronomical camera, astro camera, and really good unit. So what I'll do is I'll use this for testing. Now, this is set at 55 mils, so the back focus on this should be correct when I add this onto the end of the actual camera. So just be careful not to cross thread the unit. We don't want to do that. So there we go. So we got the ASI 20 or the ZWO 2600 MC Pro camera. We've got the 1x field flattener, and we've got the camera angle 360-degree camera angle adjuster. So that's locked in that position. If I wanted to move the camera sensor to a different angle, I'd loosen that knob and then just move that whole unit there. And as you can see, the whole camera is moving. And then it's got some incremental scales here. I think they're in 5 degrees. So you would just move that to whatever you would like to move that to. Lock that back up. So this, I think, is what we're looking at. It would have been nice to maybe have a bigger dovetail plate, but we'll see how this goes. And like I said, this focuser is very good. So you've got coarse focus there. That's winding that whole unit in and out. Very nice and smooth. Fine focus here. And I'll probably attach, I've got a ZWO electronic automatic focuser. So I might hook that up to this unit, and we'll see how that works as well with this. But yeah, that's the plan for now, is to attach the ASI air either up here or on a mounting bracket on the side there, hook it all up, And I've got a ZWO AM5 mount, and I'll probably put it on that. I do have a Skywatcher mount over here, which is the first mount I ever bought. That was great. But I've come to sort of like to use the AM5. It's pretty easy to set up, and you don't have to worry too much about counterweights and balancing too much. And this might be a bit of a pain to balance, as you could see. On that mount, we won't have to worry about it. So that's great. We will then go on and do some imaging if we've got some nice clear skies, and see how we go. Okay, welcome back. We had a successful night of imaging, and I was able to get two targets, NGC 253, which is the Sculptor Galaxy, and also I went for an old favourite, M42, the Orion Nebula. So first of all, let's have a look at M42. I've run the files through PixInsight. I'll run the information about how many subs were taken, the duration, integration duration, that sort of thing, later on in the video. But let's just go through what I got out of WBPP, should I say, as a final stacked image. And these were 2-minute subs. Reason I chose 2 minutes was I wanted to showcase some of the dust and clouds around this nebula. It's got a huge dynamic range. There's some very bright stars, and the core's very bright, especially, you know, with 2-minute subs. But let's have a look at this image here. I think you can see there's a massive gradient running from left to right here. So if I just close this now, I think it's a pretty decent picture if you have a look at it, straight out of WBPP with no processing. So let's reduce that down. I ran Graxpert to get rid of the gradient, and also SPCC to color calibrate it with the Gaia catalog. And I think you'll agree that's looking pretty nice. The stars, there are some very bright stars, as I said, so there are some diffraction spikes on here, but I'm pretty sure at this exposure time you're going to get that. It's very hard to avoid. That being said, if we look at some of the other stars in the corners, I think they're looking pretty decent. There's they're quite round. Little bit of aberration, as you can see here. There's some diffraction spikes, but you know, those stars are pretty nice and round. So it's the SV550 has done a pretty good job from the extreme edges. That being said, let's open up the aberration inspector from PixInsight, and what that will do is give us a good look at each extreme corner. Don't worry too much about the middle third, although you can see on the left hand side in the middle there that you'll see a bit of chroma. So there's a bit of blue, a bit of yellow on that side, and that's really what we're looking at. Nothing too extreme, a little bit of fringing here you can see on the left hand corner. This central corner looks pretty good. If I go down the bottom there, it's not too bad. The right hand side, as we come across, yeah, a little bit, you know, but you do have to remember that this scope is an entry point scope. It hasn't got the highest level of ED glass, but with that being said, I think it does a pretty decent job. A little bit of fringing here as well, and in the corners up on the right hand side. So overall, this is basically the center of Orion where it's blown out, so don't take too much notice of that. But all in all, you know, we're pixel peeping here, and I think, you know, you've got to weigh it up with what you're actually evaluating. So for an entry level scope, 80 millimeters, at that price point, I think it's done a pretty decent job. I have a final processed image here of M42, which I'll like to show you at the end of the video, and I think you'll be quite impressed at the level of detail that we were able to get with it. Okay, let's have a look at the Sculptor Galaxy, which is NGC 253, and again it was run through WBPP in PixInsight. If anyone doesn't know where the script is, it's under batch processing, weighted batch pre-processing. That's what WBPP stands for. And this is the image generated after being stacked and integrated. And I think you'll agree that there's a fairly horrible gradient running from left to right here. That being said, the stars and the image itself doesn't look too bad. So first things first, as in the M42 image, I'll run Graxpert to remove the gradient and SPCC to match it with the Gaia color catalog, and I think that looks a pretty decent image straight out of the camera. It's if I zoom in here, there's detail. It's a bit noisy, but this is unprocessed. It's not been stretched yet, so the corners, the stars, I think look pretty good. Again, there's a little bit of fringing here and there in the extreme corners, but nothing too extreme in my opinion. This is before we've done any processing such as, you know, blur exterminator or noise exterminator. So pretty reasonable. Again, I've run the aberration inspector in PixInsight, which will really highlight those extreme corners of the image and show up any real aberrations that you might see. You can see bottom left here is looking, you can see there's blue and yellow on that side fringing. In the middle, not so bad, but a little bit, nothing too extreme in my opinion. A little bit here on the bottom right hand side. In the center, it looks perfectly good to me. Nice round stars. A little bit of chroma there, you can see a little bit of aberration. And again, on the right hand side, there's a little bit of an aberration there. So you need to balance this with the price point of the scope, as I mentioned before. But for this price point, I think it's a great beginner's scope. If you were getting into the hobby, I'd have no qualms at all about using this scope to sort of get some pretty decent images. Anyway, that being said, I'll again, I've done some cropped final processed images of both M42 and NGC 253, and I'll show those at the end, and hopefully you're pleasantly surprised at the level of detail we're able to gain once we've done a bit of processing on them. Okay, a quick wrap up and final thoughts. Firstly, thanks very much to Svbony for sending me this wonderful SV550 scope. I really enjoyed using it. I think it's a great little scope. My final kind of recommendation, I guess, would be it's definitely a good beginner entry-level scope. I think you'll agree when you have a look at the final images that I was able to get just on a couple of nights shooting with the scope. I ended up going with my 2600. I had the guide scope and my ASI Air. In the end, I did mount my electronic focuser, so everything was on there. It was all nicely balanced on the AM5, and I got good guiding with the scope and some good images. That being said, I think really just to wrap up, what I would recommend here would be, yeah, it's a very good scope, and I think if I went back to the early days of when I first started, I would have no hesitation in opting for something like this. I think you know, the results speak for themselves, and really you can have a look for yourselves. But I'm pretty happy with the images this scope produced, and unless you're really pixel peeping, I think most people would be pretty pleased, especially at the price point and using this scope. So just want to say thanks for tuning in, and if you're still watching now, thank you very much. It's my first review, so be nice. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you could. That would really help me out. And leave any comments or maybe even some recommendations for future reviews, and that'd be great. So thank you very much for joining, and clear skies everyone.